And open our September 12th meeting. First on the agenda is agenda changes. Does anyone have any agenda changes? Nothing. Next item is public comments for non-agenda items, and seeing as there's no one in the public, we have no comments. So third item is official map revisions. So this is the fourth draft of the map. We're going to finalize descriptions, I'm just reading from the agenda, for the community facilities and talk about next steps. So
yeah, so you, John in particular, made a bunch of suggestions for changing the map itself at the last meeting. I think I got all those. The ones that I'm thinking of off the top of my head were, well, they're in the minutes, so I guess that's the better place to look. But in any case, some of the existing stormwater treatment areas were added just with those little dots or circular points on the map. They're not labeled in any way, but they're shown in their positions. Yep. And labeled as that kind of feature. The big change beyond some of the, John also had some suggestions on making the labeling more readable and changing the how the line work was represented for roads and parcel lines to make those a little more distinguishable. A little hard to tell on the screen right now, but I think if you look at the printed version, that's better. Beyond those kinds of changes, Lenore Budd, the Trails Committee chairperson, who also works in the Planning and Zoning Office, while I was making these changes, said, you know, it would be great if this map could be broadened in scale just a little bit to stretch out and grab Levine Hill Road area, because they have trails that make it their way all the way over there, and it helps from a context standpoint, she thought. But more importantly, she wanted a new future trail connection added from Levine Hill Road to the Russell Trails, because right now there is not a formal trail. There's a driveway, and there's some contention over whether that should be used by the public, because it's on the person whose property it's on is a little has some concerns about that. Anyways, so this new map is a little broader in scale, so it's zoomed out, so to speak, and it includes that feature, which I should show you on the screen so you can actually understand what I'm talking about, since it's up there. So here is Levine Hill Road, which wasn't shown on the old map because it was zoomed in too much. And here is the Sullivan Trail at the end of the town portion of Levine Hill Road, the Class 4 section. And if you come down Levine Hill Road here, this is where the Class 3 section, the part that the town plows, ends. And this is that future trail connection that the Trails Committee is interested in seeing on the map as a new future official map element. So that doesn't have to stay there. If you like the map the way it was, it can go back. I just thought, you know, she'd been involved in your discussions and seemed like a reasonable suggestion, so I made it for you to look at.
I think that makes sense. I like that you broadened it.
I did also add this note. I'm not entirely happy with the way this all looks, but I'm not quite sure how else to do it. This note is essentially described in the text that you should also be looking at tonight, that is to accompany this map. But I thought it'd be good to actually put it on the map to indicate that this future park in G is not meant to be just a floating municipal facility. It's meant to be connected to Mechanicsville Road through, you know, roads and sidewalks, but that unlike some of these other parks where we know where the road connections are going to be or have a very good idea, we really have no idea where that connection would fall on the Quinn property. And so this note makes it clear that it's assumed that there will be those connections, but that the locations are yet to be determined. So if you want that modified wording wise or or how it's graphically shown, I'm happy to do that.
On the page that shows all
The descriptions
words
of the facilities?
Descriptions of the facilities under G, which is that neighborhood, Mechanicsville Neighborhood Park. The very last sentence, you end with, location to be determined as part of any development plan for the property. And I just thought it would be good to say, for any development plan for the property between the Mechanicsville Neighborhood Park and Mechanicsville Road, which is what that oval that you've added
Okay,
now says. But
that certainly
in
makes
words,
it a
you
bit
could-
more
you could-
clear.
Instead of just saying the property, you could say between the park and Mechanicsville Road. I think that's what we were concerned about.
Yeah, I think both you and Maggie had suggested some, like, could we have it be floating? Could we have language that
Yeah.
indicates that? I didn't use the word floating in the language, but that's the idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
While we're talking about that one, so the different types of park things that are mentioned, e.g. tennis or pickleball or basketball, these are just ideas, right?
Yes, in regulatory speak, EG is for example, which means not limited to. So it gives you some sense of some possibilities, but it could be something totally different than that, and that would be
Could
fine.
we add a couple of other stimulating examples, like?
So this one is, this parentheses is specific to the hard surface courts entry, and then there are a bunch of others like playground facilities, gazebo shelters. I am happy to add whatever others you would like.
Mountain bike trails and pump track.
Okay.
Pump track is a mountain biking.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the pump track. Does the commission understand what a pump track is? Go ahead, James. Try to explain it.
So it's, I mean, they vary in size, but it's a loop or maybe a figure eight with many little humps and things. I mean, it's a pretty small scale thing, but bikers will go around and I think the idea is maybe you can go around without having to pedal much. So you go up these hoops, bumps and around these tight turns, and it's kind of like a playground for mountain biking.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. There's a smallish one at the Catamount Outdoor Family Center that is more suitable for kids, I think, although I've played on it and it's fun. And there's a much larger one at the Essex Junction Maple Street Park, which has much larger humps and really jumps where people catch air coming off of those. They seem to be popular nowadays.
So it would be made out of soil and probably grass. Except for the narrow trail that goes through it.
And those are typically separate from what we call mountain bike trails?
They can.
They could be part of
independent.
one, and they could be independent either way.
I think for this particular community facility, I don't know that there'll be much in the way of mountain bike trails on it. It's a small enough, area that it's probably more like the beginning, a trailhead to a mountain bike trail possibly, as opposed to it being the location for a bunch of mountain bike trails. But a pump park certainly could fit in that area if it made sense.
Well, if it could be the beginning of a mountain bike trail, do we know that we can get from where that neighborhood park is into a bigger area where,
Yeah, I mean, this map doesn't show a whole bunch, like a mountain bike trail network or anything. It shows a singular, I should be pointing up here. It shows a singular trail connecting it to the Sullivan Trail down here. But all of this area on the Quinn property that's forested, has potential for sugaring or maybe recreation. I mean, it depends on what the landowner's plan is for the property as to whether it makes sense to have people running around in it, or maybe it makes better sense to keep them out of there if there's going to be sugaring, for example. But it certainly is adjacent to, John. This is on the wooded edge of the cemetery and that property, and so it does have access
Right.
to could be the trailhead for trails in that area, if that made sense.
That brings up, in my mind, we say these dashed black lines are the existing trails.
Yes.
I've always thought of those as being walking trails, hiking trails, not trails for pedal bikes. Am I wrong? Are they trails for
I
pedal bikes?
I actually
and
don't
walking?
know
Is
what
it
the
okay?
restrictions are on those, on the particular trails that we see here. Do you know, James? I mean, you
Some
know
of
for
them
your
are on-
property, right?
Yeah, on our
Your
land,
property.
bikes are permitted. There aren't a lot of people using them. They're not really well designed for mountain biking. I mean, the woods roads, the wide, smoothish woods roads are perfectly fine.
Those are
but-
fine, but some of those trails that I've walked on your land, I would think that mountain bike would begin to damage them, actually, if a lot of people started using them as mountain bike trails. That's just my impression.
Yeah, they're not built specifically with bikes in mind. But people are welcome to use them with bikes.
Would it make sense, Alex, to check in again with the Trails Committee and see what their opinion is about, are there restrictions on some of these trails that they definitely want to have, or can they all be available for anybody who wants to take their bike out there? don't
I mean,
know.
I'm happy to do that, John. I don't know that we need that clarification for this effort, because the objective is to have the future trail come into existence. Whether that trail would be restricted to just certain types of uses is a decision that could be made later, I think. And again, James's idea of having like a different kind of active recreational use at this facility, like
Yeah,
like a
that's-
pump park, that's kind of
that's
separate
different.
from a network of mountain biking trails like you would see at Sleepy Hollow.
Right, right.
Which,
No, I see that as
which
separate, too.
you're not proposing we put that on here, are you? Or are you?
No, I guess for G, the pump track might fit, but
Okay,
The pump track could be in G, but not the trail, not the mountain bike trails.
right. Okay,
I'm
I got
just
that.
concerned about, are we doing something that allows for long-term damage to the environment if we let bikes ride on a lot of trails that really are only walking trails?
I think that's
That's-
something for the Trails Committee to decide.
And, yeah, it seems to me that that's the Trails Committee to make those decisions. And if they're happy with just saying trails on this map, on the official map,
I'll just run it by Lenore when she's in next week.
We'd mentioned whether the official map should be town-wide or not, and as far as I can remember, the only things outside the village area are primarily trails. Except I remember talking about the idea for a park up near Sunny Acres, Triple L, Sunsetville area.
Yeah, it's funny that that gets talked about from time to time and never
So it's,
goes anywhere.
in my mind, that's the only thing, except for the trails, that would be excluded from the official map. But there is a map for the trails. Like there's a,
Yes, there's a map in the town plan that shows the trail network vision townwide.
so I was wondering if we could just put like a little note here with an arrow pointing in that direction.
could, I mean,
Noting a future park.
We'd need to find a place for it. You know, what is the most logical place to put it up there? Because if it's going to be an official map element, it's got to be somewhere. We could also do, especially with this map getting so broad, there might be room in here to have a little inset map that you know, there's an arrow here saying, or a note saying, see inset below for Texas Hill Road or North Road area, and then the inset shows that, you know, Triple L and the area next to it and wherever it is that we want to put this park. I don't know that there's been a whole lot of discussion about where such a facility should go up there. I know where I'd put it, but I don't know what other people think about, where one should go.
There's a piece of property near the Sunset Lake area. It appears to be an abandoned house. I don't know, Marie may be able to address that. It's just as you turn into the,
It's actually not abandoned, the
No.
property was just sold recently.
Okay,
Like
so
this
that's-
summer. But
There's
it
some,
does look,
there's some town property in Sunset Villa as
there
well.
are some, yeah.
I don't know to what extent it's usable. I think it was kind of leftover land, and some of
Yeah.
it may have wetland constraints.
Yeah,
But
it's,
there are a couple of remnant chunks in that development that the town owns.
The property that the fire department.
beside it.
One of them is
Well,
the
it
fire
one of
department
them,
side.
Which
Yeah.
is right down near the lake.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about this, let me
What's the space that you were?
let me bring a map
Yeah.
up so we can actually see what we're talking about. Hold
Really
on.
difficult land to do much with.
In Sunset Villa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not Villa, Lake,
Sunny Acres.
Sunny Acres.
Oh, Sunny Acres,
Yeah.
right? Not
And that-
Sunset Villa.
And it's beside the land that the firemen own. It's it's
Orphan piece, it's hard to get to.
correct.
The easiest way to get to it is through the housing.
Yes, right.
So
And it-
Maggie, while I try to bring this up,
Concave, like,
would you like to welcome our newly arrived audience, maybe?
Yes, hello, we finally have audience members, that's fantastic. Are you here for any particular agenda items or
Education.
education?
Education in
Feel
general.
free to ask questions if, yeah.
We were hoping to find out where the Boy Scout building was gonna go.
Well, maybe you should tell us where you think it ought to go.
Where do you think a community center should go? There's been talk
Because
around
that
town.
there is talk about, definitely.
Yeah,
So think about that, a community center.
All right, so while they're thinking, I'll zoom in. This is the town,
This depends on what happens in there.
and I'm going to zoom into this portion in the middle here. So I'll zoom in a couple times so everybody can get their bearings. Here we are down here, and this is the Richmond Road coming up, and here's Triple L and Sunny Acres. I thought it was, no, it's Sunset Villa Mobile Home
Yes.
Park.
Yep.
And that's the
And-
lake.
And this is Lake Sunset here. So if I zoom in, I can show you those town-owned pieces that Barbara and Marie were discussing. At least I think I can. So this big piece right in the middle of the, that's town-owned, which seems like it would be a nice central park for that neighborhood, but it has, if I remember right,
very wet.
it has wetland issues. That's what the red is on this map. And I think I'm not sure that it's ever been, really looked at that much, but I know it's very much leftover land.
Is there some, looks like there's some road frontage?
Yeah, it looks like it has.
Yeah,
access.
it has
But I
a,
think it drops off, James, like, kind of really quickly.
Do you have the topo?
I do. Let me zoom into it. Hold
Yeah.
on just a sec. So, but I think just before I do that, I think that the fire department lot is
Yeah,
maybe
that's that funny
this one.
Yeah.
But isn't there another one beside it that the town owns? That's
oh,
my
maybe that
recollection.
triangular,
Yeah,
Yeah.
let me take this off screen for
I
just a
have-
moment so I can
Yeah.
get this identify tool to actually come up.
That was
There we
more
go.
what I was referring to, was that, not the first one that Alex showed.
It really drops away right by the road.
Yes, correct.
So road access isn't easy,
Probably not.
but if you go through the housing area,
So
you can get
here,
down to it, but
here is where my cursor is
The fire department.
is the fire department's property, that has just a little bit of lake frontage and some road frontage. And Marie, you were saying the town might own property on one side or the other?
I think it does, and I'm not,
Yes,
I had
so
a map
that-
on my desk, but I
That little
don't.
triangle there is
There?
the town's
Okay.
parcel, this is the fire department's
Got it.
parcel, and then this is that central
Yeah.
parcel that the town owns. I'll zoom in a little further.
So why does the fire department have a parcel? So they can access the lake for water?
No, Marie, you must
It
know. Come
came
on,
to
there's history
them
there.
by an
I was
odd
given-
gift. Yeah.
It was
Mike
given and-
Bissonette came and talked to the land trust about whether we could help them find a use for it
Correct.
and maybe donate it back to the,
That's was
back
my
to the
hope.
town.
Yeah. But they,
But the access to it for any use, because of the topo,
correct.
So there's the
I mean, we told them
topography,
our opinion and they
Yeah.
never picked up on it.
and you can
No,
see
see,
what
look.
John's talking about here.
Yeah,
It's
it's
pretty,
just
it's pretty
really
steep,
goes down.
to get down from
Yeah.
the road to where it actually flattens out nicely down by where it,
Yeah.
gets to the lake.
And you can see the road in the trailer park next door, is pretty reasonable
Yep.
topo, and it comes close to that fire department park. But to make the access road through really what's kind of a private road for that housing area, to make it for the public seemed kind of
So
backward
here's,
in terms of.
this is that central parcel, and you're right, it does have road frontage both on this side of Butternut. It is
Yeah.
Butternut, no,
Birchwood.
Birchwood, sorry,
Birchwood.
Birchwood
And then this
Lane,
tiny
and then
little
it's got a
connector.
Little
little
bit
skinny
there.
access over here on the other side of Birchwood. I mean, that you'd think this would be a great place for a neighborhood park, but again, there are some mapped wetlands in there, so it's unclear as to how usable it is. I don't know if anybody's ever endeavored to do a feasibility study or anything in there. Not since I've been here anyways.
That larger area, north-south, Alex, not where the red is, but there might be some potential there. Looks like it's not so up and down
Maybe, yeah, I mean, it's
topographically.
it's certainly
it looks a little
sizable. It's,
flatter.
it's about the size of 2 or 3 of
Yeah.
the house lots.
Right.
Just in that northerly portion here. Well, in any case, this is an area the town already does own.
How's it used currently?
It's just treed, I think,
It's
not
just-
used.
I don't
there
think it has
behind
any
people's houses.
formal town use. The neighborhood kids might have all sorts of fun stuff going on in there, but I don't really know. Maybe the Boy Scouts know
We didn't know, I didn't know that.
that
was
existed.
open, so to speak.
Yeah, I bet you most people don't. I'm not sure that it's signed as being that way.
Any young guys hang out there, or your friends go back in there and build forts?
They don't live up there.
No?
I don't think anybody lives up in that neighborhood. If they did, I'm sure that there would be.
Yeah, I mean, it's the
Fire
kind of
range.
place all kinds of
And
things
there
to
still
do.
might be, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we zoom out a little bit, this is Triple L Trailer Park. And again, Sunset Villas here, and this is the Sunny Acre subdivision with Birchwood. This is that funky intersection of Richmond Road and North Road and Texas Hill Road here. And the place that I've often thought would make for a good neighborhood park is right here. This property,
That's one ownership there?
yeah,
Yep.
That corner?
it's
Fairly new, someone bought it 2 or 3 years
Oh,
ago.
so that went to the
Schreier.
Schreiers?
Yep, it was with the Shires, but it sold way before the Schreier house sold. There was talk, rumblings, that there were going to be net tracker, solar, net meter, what are they called? Net trackers?
net meter
Net-
solar trackers.
Yeah, in that field. I did get several calls about that, but it never seemed to have materialized.
It's a good spot for it.
You think? Not a good spot, is that what you're saying?
No, it would be. It
Would be?
I'll bring up a clearer
I don't think the neighbors were
photo
cool on it.
of the area.
What size is that, Alex?
And I'll tell you that too, just a moment.
10, 8, 10.
All right, so. Marie, do you know what's on the property?
Not much of anything.
Because the
A
house
little
is over
shed.
here, right?
Yeah, there's
And-
maybe like a little shed
And that's,
I was
or
gonna say, is that
something,
the
but
shed
that's
there?
about it that I recall.
it's not actually developed with a home site is
No.
what we're getting at.
Correct, no, you're right.
And the property is
20 acres? 19, is that what you're showing?
well, because
Or
that land across the
9.77.
road, I think this is a 10-acre lot. And this land on the
Yeah.
other side of the road is a 9-acre
Yeah,
lot, and the
8 or-
total Schreier ownership is 19.
Right, but
So yeah,
that's,
this is a 10-acre lot here.
right, that's what I thought around
It does
there.
have some mapped wetland down in here,
Yeah.
but you know, it's right on. It's a corner lot. It's on 2 public roads. It's right across from Triple L. It's got good visibility.
Yep,
What kind of trails or sidewalks do we have from the other densely built areas down the road?
Nothing, zero.
Nothing.
Yeah, we
So,
did the
I didn't
Richmond
remember
Road
anything.
sidewalk feasibility study
Right.
3 years ago, 4 years ago now.
Right.
And, you know, it's on the official map as a future sidewalk and it's discussed but it's a $2 million project, I think.
Yeah.
It would be a very
It's big.
expensive project,
Right.
so.
and there are frequently children in the road along and through there on the
Oh,
trailer
sure.
park side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have
And
to
that-
be
you know,
really
that's-
careful driving through
That's
there.
one concern is, kids crossing the road
Crossing
to the
get
park,
to
but
that.
Yeah, I think there's
yeah,
no
if
doubt
there's an
that if
area
you were
that
to
needs
do
a
it, this would
sidewalk,
have to
it's-
become a 4-way stop.
Yes,
And why it
absolutely.
isn't right
It
now,
should
I
be.
don't
It should be.
understand.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot of, there's through traffic that comes,
Yes.
to and from Richmond through here, and for
Yeah.
some reason, as a community, we've allowed it to be, high speed and
Yeah,
just
that's,
no stopping.
that's the
and-
well,
main
I've told
part
you
of the
my
route.
idea of just having the 4-way stop and turning that central area into,
Right, some sort of
Whatever.
attractive green space or,
yeah.
except people do park there, I think, when they can't get up the hill
yeah.
in the wintertime.
Yeah.
It is,
I think
And,
it is
and
a
the
nice
electrical
place.
trucks when they
Yeah.
come
Seems
to
like
work.
there's some commuter parking there.
Yeah, possibly. I think especially in the winter when it's, or mud season.
So what I would suggest, James, is that that we've talked about this on and off, but never given it much serious consideration. It might be worth bringing it up as a part of your community outreach on the official map, but maybe waiting to put it on the official map until we actually do some kind of assessment or what have you. Just some of these other places you're putting on the map, we haven't done studies for yet either, but this one is so far afield that there might be questions about, could the town maintain it? Is it properly connected? Can people get to it safely because it doesn't have sidewalk access and that sort of thing?
So how would you recommend bringing it up? Just at a hearing,
Yeah, as I think as
verbally talking about
as
it?
part of the outreach on this map is to say, the commission talked about maybe taking this official map townwide and discussed it with the Trails Committee because trails are the principal townwide public feature, aside from the roads, and decided to keep it just focused on the village growth area. But there was one spot that we thought perhaps a future community facility was warranted outside of this, and it is up in that area. Interested in getting people's feedback on whether that would be used or would be viable or appropriate locations for it. Then I don't know. Then it's a little more preliminary, and if it doesn't end up on the map, it's maybe something we do a study on, put it on the map later, or if there's a groundswell of support for it, it could be added to the map. But I'm happy to do whatever you like. Like I said, I think there's room on the overall map to do it as an inset, so it could go right on, the draft that goes out first.
But if it's privately owned, correct?
It is, yep. Just like almost all the other
Right.
facilities shown on the map.
So if we did have the thought of creating something there, wouldn't it be wise to at least tentatively get it onto the map?
Well, it's all just a matter of degree. I think my philosophy is you do want to get things on the map so that if development happens, they don't become impossible. But it is an encumbrance on a person's property to have these facilities. And so I think we ought not do it lightly. You know, there ought to be a real intention behind putting it there. And in this case, there's been a lot of discussion that it'd be nice to have something up there, but it's not clear to me that it's robust enough to put that encumbrance on
Is this
somebody's
residential
property.
3?
This is,
Oh, no, that would be.
this is the dividing line.
Yeah.
So this is rural residential 2 on the east side and rural residential 1 on the west.
All right.
I like the idea that James brought up. Maybe it is a matter of having some discussion that's brought to the public to see how strongly the feelings are about identifying it.
About this particular spot or this particular
And
facility.
At least this particular area.
Right.
And then let us spend some time trying to find sort of the best options as to where it might go before, and then take that to the community in terms of an actual location. I know what Barbara's saying in terms of if we want it, we should get it on the map, just like we've done on the other parts of the official map. But I don't think we're focused in enough quite on it, but it's still a good idea, and we shouldn't let that go.
So we have just a few more minutes left of this discussion.
We got a question.
Just
Yeah.
okay, are we
Oh,
allowed
please,
to-
yeah,
I
please.
think, it's an opinion or so. I think it's very important to take into consideration what you're talking about. If I own a piece of land and you guys put future use on it, I'm not gonna be happy. You need to talk to the landowner, you know,
Right.
you need to talk directly with them
Yeah.
and.
Yep.
In a
That's
sense, it's
actually-
permission.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, and that's
Really?
actually
Okay.
the next part of our discussion is to,
Okay.
how to approach landowners about
Yeah,
this.
before it goes on a map. you need
Yeah.
Everything that's on here,
Yeah,
as well as what we're just talking about now.
So you actually get permission from the landowner to put it on the map as a future town use?
Permission's not the right
Permission's not
word.
the right word.
Agreement, understanding?
I think
Okay.
notice and an understanding of what that means. I think there's the possibility that some landowners may object,
Yeah.
and the facility may still end up on their property even with that objection. But in an ideal world, everyone would feel good about it. But it's not always the case.
Because you're affecting value when you do that. You're
Yeah,
affecting
it's-
value negatively or positively.
Right.
It's hard to say.
In some respects, it could go in either direction, but it's certainly an encumbrance, regardless. And that's an issue. The way the official map works procedurally is that what it does is just put everyone on notice that the town has a plan to do something in that location, and that if the property wants to be developed, the development has to leave that space available. And if the developer says, no, I don't want to leave that space available, I need it for 2 house sites, and they get denied because of this official map, it starts a clock within which the town has to acquire it. And if we don't, then the development can proceed. So it forces, it basically says, here's our intention, and if push comes to shove, the town has to follow through and buy that portion of your property. And if we don't, then our money's not where our mouth is, and you get to proceed. But it does give essentially the town a first right of refusal, if for lack of a better term, on that portion of the property.
I would say for the planning commission, we're very aware of what you're bringing up, and we're very sensitive to discussing these proposals. They're only proposals with landowners, all the landowners. We want everybody to see the whole map, and then some people will be impacted on their very property. And we're very, very aware that that needs to be a discussion. It can't just be, here it is, guys.
Well, this doesn't pertain to that.
the only thing I wanted to bring up was and maybe we've talked about it before. Has there been any discussion as to the importance of that intersection at Buck Hill and 116? And whether that's something that, I mean, the settlement now reaches that point. There's a constant sort of problem with speeds as people enter the village from that direction. Is that an intersection that we think warrants some attention and perhaps inclusion in the official map?
Well, that was definitely part of the scoping study.
Yes.
And we're going to have
But I
additional
don't
housing there.
think-
It's being built right now.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
And it's still
Yeah,
a sort
no,
of
it's not on
pliable
here.
intersection in some ways. Is it something that requires attention, I guess?
So maybe it gets
Yeah.
one of those circles
Well, I guess.
that.
There's plenty of
I
numbers
don't mean
left.
a rotary, I mean one of the circles
Yeah.
on our map that points to that.
It's a good idea.
Yes, there's not one extra one
Yeah,
here.
so Charlotte, so yeah, I'm not seeing it on,
It's okay.
Maggie, you saying we're running out of time for this subject.
well,
I've
yeah,
got
we
a-
are, but I'd like to finish up with that unless it looks like we want to continue the discussion. Ralph had a good point about the intersection with Buck Hill. I see the proposed sidewalk that stretches from the Meadow Mist development.
So we're
and
down,
connects.
we're down here.
Right.
Ralph was bringing
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Sorry, I stepped out so that I could
Yeah,
get
that's
a piece of
okay.
paper for these folks to sign, put their names down. But are you proposing to add something here, Ralph?
Well, we've got numerous intersections that require attention at various levels.
Oh, you just want to add a circle around it and say possible future intersection improvement and.
Traffic calming was the.
Absolutely, yeah. There
Yeah.
there's in the village corridor scoping study, it talks about maybe having a split lane divider there
Yeah.
to slow traffic down as you come in. Maybe a more attractive, or not
There were,
attractive,
yeah,
a
a
more
number of-
robust welcome to the village feature. I'm happy to add, I think that's a good idea.
So-
Did everybody else think that was a good
Yeah.
idea?
Yes,
Okay, yeah, I'll add
Seems
that.
like with the sidewalk ending there, we'll want a crosswalk.
Yeah, of course, the issue is there's nothing on Buck Hill Road West for the crosswalk to connect to, but I guess the trails are there.
The trails
there's
are
a
very
trail right
close.
there.
Yeah, the V-Trans tends to be a little difficult when it comes to installing crosswalks on state highways if there's no formal sidewalk infrastructure on one side. But we could educate them the fact that Hinesburg is a rural town and that dirt roads actually are walkable, and when they have trails, a few hundred yards down the road, it makes sense. Okay, so I'll
Good
add that as a
suggestion,
new intersection improvement. Good catch, Ralph.
I always have felt that road should be tired.
Thank you.
Buck Hill Road?
Yes.
It certainly
It's like
would
part
help
of the
with
village
the
almost.
erosion issues on that road.
There's so
that's for
many
sure.
problems with that road, they can't ever seem to get it right, that the gravel is running all the time. And it's steep, and someone was actually killed there years ago in an accident.
Pretty good circle, Barb.
It's,
Pretty good.
Any-
Okay, well,
Anything
I
else
got
on
that.
any other suggestions on the map or with the written descriptions?
Maggie, I've got a whole bunch of marks. Why don't I give them to Alex? A lot of them have to do with east is called west, west is called east. Not things that we need to necessarily
Okay.
discuss as a group,
Okay,
but
if
there's
they're-
a
yep.
lot of stuff, so I can
That's a great
hand it
idea.
off to him.
Yep.
I would be happy to take that. Does anybody have any substantive, non-east-west typographical kinds of changes you wanted to make to those descriptions? Besides the one James recommended to area G?
And that Ralph recommended for the,
Right, for the new number 6 on the intersections. Again, the point of this is to take our first crack at an official map, which we are revising, and be much more specific about what facilities will be on these areas. So if you feel like it's got the necessary specificity, then great. If not, happy to make changes.
Well, how about intersection 5 there, Commerce Drive and Mechanicsville Road? You didn't note it, but maybe it's been done. Was there no scoping study that included that intersection?
No,
I mean, what your words say, currently a two-way stop, but may
Oh, right,
require
there's
a
a
change
typo.
to a four-way stop or an alternate. And everywhere else where you've talked about that, there's been a scoping study.
yeah,
And
there hasn't been.
hasn't been. So do we want to say there needs to be a scoping study of that?
Oh, I don't think you need to say that in the official map. In fact, it might weaken the official map to say that, because somebody could argue, well, wait a minute, if you're saying you need to do that, then why is it on the map? I think you can put it on there, and if a scoping study wants to be done, that could be done without it having to be mentioned in the official map.
Well, number 2, the roundabout alternative, where on 116 there,
number 4?
you actually say still needs scoping study. On number 4, you say still needs scoping study.
Yeah, you're
I'm
right.
just saying,
Be
do we
consistent.
say on this newly added one
Yeah.
and on number 5, still needs scoping study?
Sure,
Or
that-
maybe on the newly added one, we don't need to say that, because as Marie said, there's been a scoping
Yeah,
study
well, I'll
to
reference
include
the
that.
2014. Well, that's,
But
yeah,
those
that's
other
good.
intersections, you actually say needs a scoping study.
No, you're right. I guess the reason I didn't put it here is because in my own mind, I don't think it needs a scoping study. I think it's pretty easy to
That
just
may
make
be
the
the-
call and
right.
say, if we want it to be a four-way stop, we put stops at the other intersection
Sure.
approaches. You don't have to change anything except put up
Right.
2 additional, signs, with some flagging ahead of it for the first 6 months, But I can put that in there.
I agree with you. It seems like a slam dunk, but nonetheless, in order to be consistent with why we propose to do something,
Okay, I can add that. I'll fix the will may. I think it should just say
yeah, that will may. I thought that was a nice finesse there.
Yeah.
Pick which word you want.
We don't want to say roughly what size we want it to be,
Size of what?
community facility?
Which,
Like G, how much area we want to take up? Do we want it to be an acre, 2 acres?
that's actually a good point, Dennis. So,
Because if you want all this stuff in it, how big do you need it?
yeah, so this map is to scale and could be measured.
So you have it to scale?
Yeah, yeah, and so, but the way this map will be used, most people just be looking at it, and it might be nice, since I can measure what the area of these blobs are, to just include them in parentheses and
How
the
did you come
description
up
of
with that
each.
area?
Yeah, right, that was my question. The blob, how did you come up with?
Yeah, well, some of them were were easier than others. So the linear
you've already
park,
got
it's
that,
a it's
yeah.
a it's a
Right.
number of feet offset from
Right.
the Route 116 right away. I think we'd said 100 feet. I can't
Yeah,
remember
we
exactly.
said 100.
But G might be
G
depending
is
on
the
how much
one.
development happens there, right? Because we have a
We've got a whole
formula
set
for
of
that.
standards for how
No,
much.
I think that what those standards say is what a minimum amount is. What's shown in the official map could be a bit more than that, and perhaps not all of it gets developed, and portions of it might remain wooded or what have you. But I think it would be helpful for the reader to know the approximate acreage that each of these are. It might be helpful for all of you, actually, to be able to say, well, wait a minute, that was a good idea, but I didn't think it was going to be that many acres. Knock it down by an acre or
That
something
seems
like
very
that.
small. We should make it larger.
seems
Or the
small
other way
to me.
around, yeah.
Yeah.
So I can add those acreages. I could tell you what they are. I think I could tell
Is
you
it
what they are right
inappropriate
now.
to say approximately so many acres based on what you actually measure here?
Yeah, that's
for
what I would-
B, C?
that's what I would
Or
add.
Put the word approximately in there too?
That's what I would add to the decisions is approximately X
X
acres. And then, yeah, if during your community feedback system or during your own further deliberations, you want to change that, we can change the acreage, and then I can adjust how it's shown on the map to be bigger or smaller.
The way B, C, and A actually, and D, all those shapes came out of some proposals that we're already seeing from
Right.
developers.
Yep.
Whereas G, we just drew a rectangle. I'm thinking, why
Yes.
not make that just a circle, an abstract form,
We could.
put an area to it? Mm-hmm. Maybe similar to this area right now that the G is. I don't know. I mean, we're not trying to say it's that shape necessarily.
No, we're just trying to be specific about how big and where.
Right.
So whether it takes on a rectangular shape or a pentagon or a circle, I don't think it matters that much. Yeah. But-
If developers understand that shape is not locked in.
Yeah, well, I think we're using those words throughout the document, right? Locations for future improvements are approximate only,
Right.
so on and so
Right.
forth. But I'll definitely add the acreage, Dennis, that way you all have a better sense of it, and the people you talk to. I'm sure each of the landowners you're gonna talk to is gonna ask that question, like, okay, so you wanna do a park on my property in conjunction with, whatever development, that might be nice. How big a park? And that would help them.
Does the word approximate apply to shape and size?
Should.
I
my
can
opinion.
spell that out in the
It seems
description,
to me
you know.
that would not weaken the document, but actually
Sure.
make it a little more
Might be
understandable.
a good
little more
proviso to
flexible.
put at the beginning of the future community facilities description on page 1 of the descriptions. Just to, write it underneath it before going on to A and B and all that. It's just say,
This applies to everything.
yeah, shapes and sizes are approximate.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Good to see you, fellas.
Come again. You can watch us on television too,
Or the internet.
Live or?
Live. You can watch
Live.
this
Either or.
live.
Or-
And you
or
can
after
go
the
back
fact.
and, you can go back and see this event when you were here.
Whoa, spooky. Thank you.
I just wanted to comment that the G seems small in comparison to if you look at lot 15, E, or B and C on
and
the
C
property that's the Bissonnet land, I'll call it that. It just seems small for the amount of property that it actually is.
How large is that parcel?
100 and some odd acres.
Well,
It
just
also has to do with density,
remember
in
that,
terms of
yeah.
what's allowed for density on B
There's
and C
a
and D.
lot more
what's allowed.
development in the area around C and B
Okay.
and
Right.
A than there will
Than
be
there
on
can be in
around
G.
G, because you see where the gray area
Yep.
is on the map?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the extent of the.
Okay. And even though the lot extends out further.
Yeah, so the
Okay.
Quinn property is all of
Goes
this in
back
white
in there,
too.
right.
Yes, I know.
But
Right.
but that's not part of the growth area, wouldn't be served by municipal water and sewer, has a much lower development potential. It's really this area in here, still a
Okay.
sizable development potential,
Yes.
but not,
Yeah.
I don't believe it's as much as
No, I
this
agree.
area here.
Yeah.
I think we need to be sensitive too, because they're also looking to donate to the cemetery.
They are, yep. Yep, and I
Yeah, I
think
think
I
we
think
should
that's
get
gonna
some
be the
credit for that.
Yeah.
opening
Yeah.
conversation with them is, we're so grateful that you made this offer, and by the way,
We want more.
we think any development here could benefit by having additional public facilities to support it. Because they know, although they're donating it to the town,
It's not
they know
a
it's
very
not a
useful
very usable piece of property. And they know the town's not gonna create a park there that would add value to any development that would happen on the property. Whereas
Yeah.
this hopefully would do that, people would wanna live in a neighborhood up there more because there was a park with a pickleball court and a pump park and
It's just a virgin piece of property that nothing's been done with it yet, so to me, those are so much more attractive to consider for public use than one where there's just a little bit of land and they're really limited in what they can do.
right?
Now, it's just a quick question. What is an enhanced crosswalk? You used that term several times.
Yes, it's a term that's used in that 2014 Village Corridor Route 116 scoping study, and what it means in that study is something more than just paint.
Then paint.
So it could be textured pavement, it could be a raised surface so that the crosswalk,
You actually feel it when you
feel
drive
it as
across
you drive
it.
over it. It could have
Signs
it
out
could
in
have-
the middle of the road.
Could have
that say
that.
crosswalk.
I think-
The flashing light system where you can push the crosswalk.
Yeah, I think that their term for enhanced is more about the actual crosswalk and less the bells and whistles around it. So they mean like different textures, different patterns rather than just stripes. So some communities you'll see like what looks like granite brickwork, and then in the middle there'll be red brickwork, and
Yep.
that sort of combination of materials and colors cues drivers and pedestrians that this is a place where people are supposed to be as opposed to just cars.
That's what enhancement.
Yeah, so
implies.
those are the kinds of things that I believe the study was talking about when they talked about enhanced crosswalks.
You're familiar with what is on the street in Burlington, Pine Street, where there are buttons that
Sure.
pedestrians can
For
push.
the rapid
and
flashers.
And there are flashers that
Yep.
turn on then. You're not expecting that when you say, we're not expecting that when we
It's-
say enhance.
It's definitely an enhancement to a crosswalk. But I think the study meant more in situ, improvements to the road
pavement
itself. And that could be accompanied by things like rapid flashers or
I think
signage
those
or
rapid
whatever.
flashes are dangerous,
Why?
because people think they can just push it
And then walk.
Right.
Yeah. I like them because
no, but I mean, as long as you're smart about it.
right. Yeah, I like
I
them
know
because
a few people
there are
that they
places
hit.
where
They push the button.
And step onto the
Yeah.
road.
Well, I think that it's road safety, traffic safety is everyone's responsibility, whether you're a pedestrian or a bicyclist or a driver. And
if you hit-
just like you can have, inattentive or just plain dumb drivers who don't pay attention to the fact that somebody just stepped out into a crosswalk or stepped out long ago and they're still coming at them. You can have the same kind of inattentive pedestrians who are, yes, exactly, texting and walking out into the road.
There'll be an app where they can turn it on with their cell phone, don't even
Or
have to look
talking
up
on their
from the
phone.
cell phone. The final one I'm
That just-
not clear on is, what is a bioretention facility? How do we define that? Do we just have a definition in our regulations that says what a bioretention facility is? It's not just a retention pond. It's more than that.
Yeah, it's a good question.
And you use that term a number of times.
Yeah.
In fact, on 5, you say detention and pre-treatment pond.
Right, and
But
there's
on 6 and
in 4, there's a clear
4,
distinction made between detention or bioretention. You're right, John. I think that in this case, bioretention is a place where water is retained, but there is plant matter that is helping with the treatment of that water in that retention area. Detention area is just a place where water is detained and then is metered out, and there may not be any plant matter, any biomatter that's having any impact.
since these words will be part of the official map, shouldn't we define what bioretention means then? If we're gonna tell,
standard industry term and we can let it, save space?
Right, I think.
I've not seen it before.
Well,
I
the,
don't see it as a bioretention area. Have you seen it on your
Yeah.
documents?
Yeah. Fairly.
the
And
state,
there's a definition as to what that means?
Yeah, I'm sort of an organic kind of guy,
the state did
So are you,
recently update their
with it,
stormwater
man.
regs, and I think that we
did,
could,
and
Whether you and I know about it, what it
Yeah.
means, is one thing. Whether a developer knows what it means, and then argues one way or the other.
I can get you, you know, the state stormwater regs, and see whether it's a well-defined term in those. I mean, those are sort of the standard for the state, if that would help. And if it's not well-defined there, then maybe there's a better term to use, or maybe we could add a little asterisk saying, you know, see.
As defined by the state
Yeah,
standards.
as defined in the state stormwater standards, something like
It
that.
just seems to me, if we're using a term like that, we should say what it means. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah, but I think you could make the argument then that, I'm not disagreeing with you, but you could also then extend that and say, where does it stop? Do we need to define a pretreatment pond? Do we need to define just a detention area?
So 3 definitions.
Do we need to define a swale? Do we need to define, you know, it's just a matter of where do you stop? But it wouldn't be difficult to look it up and see if there's a
Or it
clear.
could just be in the glossary or whatever it is that we have in there.
Well, the
Yeah,
trouble
I mean,
is
we
that,
have
I'll look, but the official map doesn't have a glossary, it's a standalone document. So we could refer to the glossary in the town plan
Right.
or the definitions in the zoning regulations.
Right.
I can check and see
Or
if
the
we
state
defined it.
regulations.
Or the state
All of
regs, yeah.
that could be part of the town official map.
Yeah.
References to other locations.
We could just refer to it, yeah.
Right.
I like that.
I will look into that and make the appropriate reference. How's that sound?
Okay.
Is that good, Rob?
There already is a reference to the 2015 feasibility study. So if it's defined in there or used in there, is the current reference enough in your mind, John?
If there's a reference to that document and it's in that document, that's fine.
Okay, because I think it is, but I'm not 100%. I'll check.
You will find out.
Yep.
Okay, so we're over our discussion on the official map by a half hour. So either we spend the next 15 minutes and really finish up with official map, or we just have 15 minutes of discussion on the design standards, because we need to talk about the municipal planning grant. So I guess I'm inclined if you know, to just plow through the official map, and talk about our next steps. And finish up with that, if that makes
You've
sense.
already talked a bit about next steps. I just put it on the agenda to make sure we're all on the same page. I think we talked about it at a previous meeting, right?
Yeah, we
And there
did. It was-
and John just mentioned it.
In those excellent minutes.
Yeah.
But Alex did.
That was just the last meeting. It was a meeting before that. But so my understanding was you wanted to reach out to landowners directly, and we had talked about a letter that would go out to them, followed up by an in-person visit and or phone call, and that we would also roll it out to the community as well. You know, through the normal channels. So put it up on the website, Front Porch Forum, all of that. Maybe a townwide mailing.
And sort of sync, or would this be done at the same time as when we schedule, because we're gonna do a hearing on map and
And design
design
standards.
standards together.
So my
Are we
my
including-
recommendation is don't even worry about the hearing yet. Focus on the community outreach and feedback first. And because it's possible you'll get a lot of feedback
Yeah.
that'll be like, you are so far off base, just like start over. Hopefully it won't be that. But you know, there could be a lot of good feedback, in which case you wouldn't want to be, you know, scheduling a hearing yet. So I would think, you know, we need to get the letter out to landowners right away with a copy of the map and some good text to hopefully make them feel as warm and fuzzy as possible.
I mean, there's only 2 that are really kind of new, right? The rest of them are kind of,
Features on the map,
like D, B, C, and E are pretty much
Yeah, it's G
kind
and
of proposed now, I believe.
just G.
as far as the community facilities in gold, A is new, B is revised,
Right.
but it's in the ballpark. G is new,
Yeah.
D is new,
Well,
Oh, D, you,
kind, yeah, I guess.
F is new. So
I think they've talked about D before.
Well, they really haven't actually. They, you know, in their development master plan, they do leave that hillside open, but, you're right, actually, they do talk about a trail network that would be open to the public up there, but I don't know that they really thought about that open hilltop as a real park area.
I
But
think G and F are gonna be the.
the two real new ones, yeah, you're probably right. But we have made some changes
F is
to
this tiny little.
No, I understand there's changes.
to
but I
other
mean-
sidewalks as well and that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Can you find F?
kinda.
But does that outreach
room for you and me, I'd say.
protocol sound decent? I mean, I think what that means is there's going to be a little bit of a delay between this information getting out and you being able to talk about what feedback you're getting back at a planning commission meeting, right? Because it's going to take a time to get the letter out, time to make personal visits and phone calls. So it's not like your next meeting, September 26th, you're going to be able to talk about what do people think, right? Because we'll still be in the gathering feedback
Yeah.
phase, probably all the way through October, I would think. That would be what I'd suggest, is try to get it out there and get feedback through the month of October. It's a great time to get public feedback in the fall. And then in November, you know, at your November meetings, figure it out. Figure out what you want to do and then schedule a public hearing, you know, and if you can do it before the holiday season comes into full swing, great. If not, then, you know, that's your New Year's present to yourself is, you know, early January when everybody's back and thinking straight, you have a public hearing on all this good stuff.
Sounds good to me.
What would be super helpful for me would be if there were one or two of you that would volunteer to help edit or write the letter that's going to go out to landowners. I'm happy to do the more general sort of blast to the community once I'd kind of like to get the letter to the landowners first before the whole community hears about this. And,
Yeah.
uh, and so I'm happy to write the letter, but I'd appreciate it if I had a couple of editors who could make sure it was good.
I'd be happy to do that if I'm gonna be, when are you hoping to get this done?
I don't know. I got it needs to happen right away. So I guess, you know, in the next week to week and a half. Yeah, you can be an editor. And you too, Maggie? No, not in the next week. Okay. Anybody else want to help me, Barbara and I, make sure this is,
I'd like to be able to do it, and I think I've got good background to do it, but I just am too
you
busy.
two booked up this
I
next
am
week or
too
so?
busy.
Okay.
I could do it if it's in the next 8 days.
Okay.
After that,
You evaporate?
You're gone.
I'm gone.
All right. All right. Well, I'm tagging both of you two then to help in the next 8 days.
Right. Don't wait till the 8th day either.
Try hard not to.
But we all get to read it before you send it out?
Well, it's up to you. If you're going to have another meeting in 2 weeks, so
Yeah.
we could bring the
Yeah, the draft
honed
to
copy
us.
back to that meeting and get your okay before it goes out, or I could just work with these two and get it out. So
Bring
I
it
mean, do you
back.
have an idea what you're gonna say?
yeah,
Suckers. Strike that.
Bring it back. Bring it back, Alex. I mean, we
Okay.
can put it on.
that's
Can't-
fine. I don't have any
Doesn't it
problem.
make, Maggie, doesn't it,
You're draining the canal. You're
the swamp, we're draining the swamp?
Moving that building.
well. That's fine. Then I'll work with Barbara and Ralph, and we'll put it back on your September 26th agenda. You can all give your stamp of approval, and then it can go out. You know, that next day or the next.
That makes sense,
Yeah,
Maggie?
probably next day.
Nothing
back
makes
to
sense.
us?
Nothing makes sense. No, it's all just a blur.
And in the
And the-
meantime, I'll work with Aaron Kimball to get a website ready, but not there yet until we're ready to send the first letter out.
good
Because I
idea.
want landowners to have a place to go, and then the website will also be there for the community members too.
Alex. We'll give you sure of that.
You're talking about sending letters to landowners.
Yes.
Any particular group of landowners? The
anyone,
ones that have something.
anyone who
on them,
has any
and otherwise,
any piece of-
not all landowners.
No.
Okay.
We'll talk to the community at large.
Okay.
Maybe just like a week later with a
Right.
townwide blast of email and front porch forum,
Yep.
that sort of thing.
We
Okay.
could also send out something, maybe there's somebody out there that wants to donate some land for a park.
Okay.
What if it's not where you want it?
Maybe they could do a swap.
True, good one.
Ralph is moving everything else.
Let's have them. Yeah, let's swap. Good idea, Dennis, but. All right. Sky.
So that's official map. You want to do the design standards, or do you want us to go on to planning grant?
Well, let's talk about, what do you guys think? Do you want to, I'd recommend talking about the grant first, just, let's make sure we do that because it needs to get done. And if there's any time left over, we can talk about the standards.
All right, well, you have a synopsis of the grant per our discussion at the last meeting. I'm not gonna lie to you, it's not like a fully fleshed out project. It's an idea that we would then hope to get funding for so we could have a consultant help us flesh it out more. But hopefully this is enough to get our arms around it and for me to write up the grant application. I reached out to a couple different consultants with this synopsis saying, this is what we want to do. Can you give me an idea of like what a ballpark cost might be so we know how much to apply for? And I haven't heard back from them yet. So I don't know if this is I don't think this is a maximum grant award, $26,000 grant project. I think it would be substantially less than that, but I don't know for sure. That's what I aim to find out from these consultants if I can hear back from them.
You mentioned that they're, they look kindly on the public outreach
Yes.
piece of it, so.
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Any suggested changes? Want to change course? Ideas? If not, all I need is a motion, and then I can get Joe to sign it later. Select Board will be reviewing it next
Is
week.
this what the grant application looks like?
No, the grant application
have
is
a
done online,
format.
and there's a whole bunch of questions you answer.
You have to answer.
But this is the way I sort of write it up for you to understand and be able to,
And then you draw out of this to answer the questions.
Yeah, exactly.
Any comments? Otherwise, anyone care to make a motion?
I wasn't nice. I didn't give you draft motion language like I did the select board. So if somebody's gonna make it, you're gonna have to make it up. It's really just authorization to, or support for applying for the municipal planning grant as described in the synopsis.
I'll make that motion.
Will you? Nicely done. Nicely paraphrased. I think that's,
Finesse that right in.
I think that's fantastic.
It's not how good a job I did. It's what Kate captured.
Yeah, Kate,
Did you get
you've
it?
got it. Kate's got it.
Taking away, I think she got it.
Do we need to read it back or are we good? I think we're good.
I think we're good.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
I should add, I think this is really a good thing to be doing
Yes.
and going after. Makes a lot of sense.
Yes. Agreed.
So that was quick, Maggie. Didn't take a half
Excellent.
hour.
No, it
Now you have
didn't.
time for village
We
design
picked up
standard.
space.
Okay. Village area design standards. Look at this. It's our 6th meeting on this. Fifth draft.
Yeah, so in the fourth draft, I stopped doing track changes and just said, okay, this is a clean version with everything we've talked about.
I'm glad you did that.
This fifth draft is a track changes, but just from that last version. So from what you talked about last time, I think John again made some specific suggestions, and there was a good discussion about stormwater and whether stormwater treatment areas should count, and you said
Right.
no. So there some language came out for that.
And those calculation examples that you've,
Yeah, I have another alternate version of those examples in a tabular form, but I was having a hard time figuring out which one was easier to read. This is not easy to read because the track changes with all the underlining makes it a little weird, but I'm open to suggestions on how to make that more user-friendly.
I'm gonna have to go back to the size and location paragraph.
Okay.
And the things associated with that. I'm still not making sense of those numbers, particularly when you get down to the non-residential development numbers.
Okay.
What about non-residential that's less than 6,000 square feet? How do
So-
we say something about that? I don't see where that comes in.
So good question, in the applicability paragraph,
Yeah?
it starts off by saying, this public open space shall be provided in development projects with 10 or more new residential dwelling units, or 6,000 square feet or more of new non-residential space. So 6,000 is the cutoff. If your project is
Less than
less than
that?
6,000, you're not
Zero.
required to do anything.
Okay.
If you have less than 10 units, it's an 8-unit development, 8 dwelling units, you have 0 required public open space. As
Okay.
drafted, I can change that.
No,
But this
no.
was based, I think, on some discussions early on, and I think maybe it was James who said, well, wait a minute, are we sure we want these smaller, shops having to, or non-residential spaces having to supply a public open space? So that's part of why the 6,000 is the cutoff.
So then you go down to the 10,001 square foot to 50,000 square foot non-residential. And you say the greater of 2,000 or 15% of the floor area. To get more, to require more than 2,000 square feet, you have to have about 13,000 square foot of development to get to that. So why do we put the 10,100 there? Why isn't that 13,000, for example?
I can change that. I just figured it was.
You know what I'm saying?
No, I do know what you're saying.
If you do the multiplication out, when you get to 2,000 square feet, which is the bottom, the least you can provide, you will have 13,000 plus square foot of non-residential development.
Sure. Yeah, it'd probably be better to just change the first category to include everything up to that.
What happens if your property, let's say G,
Yep.
they go to talk to the landowner and he agrees, so is he exempt from this?
No. So this is a good point, and one that'll be
So-
difficult to explain to the public, especially if you guys don't all have it in your head yet. So these two regulations are separate, but they can work together, but they don't have to. So the official map, where it says, community facility G, the developer has to accommodate something there. They don't have to build it, but they have to leave room available for it.
And we're gonna say how much room?
We're gonna say approximately.
It has to be G. It has to be consistent with what's on the map.
Yep.
But then, if they come in and they do a larger project on that property, so let's say they came in on that property and said, well, we just want to do an 8-lot subdivision, 8 houses, that's it.
Yep.
We would say, okay, this village area design standard doesn't apply to you, you're too small, but the official map still does. You still have to leave that G area alone, because someday we might want to park there.
Okay.
So then let's say that developer says, well, no, I don't want to do 8, I want to do 80, because they could on that one. We would say, great, same rule for the official map applies. You got to leave room for G, as shown on the official map. But these design standards now kick in. So not only do you have to leave that area available, but you have to provide actual developed open space of a certain amount, square feet. And we would say,
Not in G?
it doesn't have to be on G. We encourage you to do it on G, but you're not required to do it on G. So if you, for example, said, I want the town to build that park because I don't know what the town wants and I don't want to get into your business, but I have my own little space over here that I think would be much cooler for a public open space and it'll fit your design area requirements. I'm going to do it down there. We would say, great, fine. So just leave G alone and build the open space over here and everything's good. It's going to be way more likely that a developer's going to say, oh, I'm not supposed to touch G, and you want me to build a park? Well, of course I'm going to put it in G because that's the place I can't develop anyways. You
And
know?
then that will accommodate the requirement for the park.
Right, it will do both in the same spot. So they can, but they're not required to develop the open space where it's shown on the official map.
How do they learn that, what you just said? How do they know that?
In the applicability paragraph, so it says that although the provision of public open space to coincide with appropriate official map elements is encouraged, the requirements of this section may be satisfied in locations not identified on the official map. So that allows them to say, you want me to build 14,000 square feet of playground and park space, and you want me to not touch this area on your official map? Well, I'm going to put the playground and park space in that area, or I'm not. It's flexible. They could do it in a different spot if they wanted.
But, Alex, when you have such a large property as the Quinn property where G is,
Yep.
these rules would not allow G to be moved on the property.
So
Say they wanted another area, but
and that's possible that in fact, it happened with the Haystack Crossing
okay,
project.
Right.
But let's say someone comes in for that property and says, we think a neighborhood park's great, but our engineers tell us that it should be over here, and
Right.
here's why. There's a stormwater issue or wetland, whatever you didn't know about.
yeah.
There's a process by which the official map can be revised
Okay.
during their development review process,
Good.
and that's what they would have to do to make
Good.
that happen.
I'm glad to hear that because I think that though we're choosing these spots, maybe there is a better spot.
Yeah, so
Right.
this,
Yeah.
We wouldn't want to squelch.
Yeah,
Right.
it's important to have that flexibility.
Yeah, you
for
need that
sure.
flexibility.
Exactly. Okay, good.
let me, in fact, just so you have comfort on that, because it is a comforting thing. Let me just read you what the official map statute says on that front. Because
The state statute.
the state statute, yep,
Okay.
which is what governs. Since it's funny, the official map is a standalone document. It doesn't have a 200-page text of zoning regulations to interpret it or back it up. So here's what it says about official maps. Okay, so it says minor changes in the location of proposed public facilities may also be made to particular sections of the official map if the change is recommended by a majority of the planning commission and approved by resolution of the legislative body. This process may take place concurrently with the review of development or subdivision of a parcel that is proposed to be subject to a map change. So that means a developer can be in the DRB process and say, I have a better idea for this. I don't want to go through the formal official map, revision process. This is a minor change to the location. A majority of you says yes, and the select board passes a motion, and it's done. That's what that says.
But it has to get referred to us
Yes.
to say it's okay.
Well,
So
sure,
the
yeah.
the DRB refers it to
The
us? or-
statute doesn't indicate
say
what that
how that
protocol is. I
happens.
think that we would try to make it happen as efficiently as we could, you know. It would come up, I would be aware of it, I would put it on one
So
of
the
your
DRB
agendas.
would have to be aware of that.
Yes.
If it were
knowing that
happening
they-
during the
if-
DRB process, it's
Right.
possible that a developer could come and work with us in advance. And before the DRB ever saw the
Right, it went
application,
in
the
that.
developer could say, hey, I've got a better idea. And then I could bring it to you and the select board you could both say yes before the DRB ever
So we could
saw
sort
it.
of sign off and that would go along to the DRB
Right.
when they were reviewing
Or
the
it could happen
project.
concurrently with an active project, like, you know, you're in sketch plan and then you make a decision to do something differently. So it's multiple ways it could work.
Do, Alex, under the building floor areas, we've got these categories, 6 to 10, 10 to 50,
Oh, right,
50 and above.
Fix that, yep.
That is saying that there are places in our town that there might be as much as 50,000 square feet of non-residential being proposed or more.
Yeah,
That's what that says.
yeah. So for example,
How many
The-
square foot in the
the
village
Blumstrom
northwest?
Well, the Blumstrom project,
Northeast.
the master plan that they proposed had 150,000 square feet of new
all their
non-residential space
non-residential
in
stuff.
all of their project.
Yeah.
So that would fit in that category.
Yeah.
The Haystack Crossing project, I don't remember exactly. I think it was in the 50,000 ballpark. It might
They
have been.
totaled up all their different
Yeah.
places.
I think so.
Okay,
Clearly, it's going to be, you know, just big projects that get to that
Sure.
level. The Hinesburg Center project that's proposed behind Kinney Drugs has just 13,000 of new, 13 plus
Of
of new
non-residential.
non-residential space.
So the suggestion then, to go back to John's thing, is that it says 6 to 13,000 square feet and 13 to 50,000.
Essentially, John just wants me to recalibrate the first column so that
all right.
it breaks where you have to do more
Where
than
you have to
2,000
do
square
more.
feet.
Right.
Which makes sense. It'd be
And
more
why not?
intuitive that
Okay.
way. I think I chose these numbers well, I did column one first and then I didn't think about your point, so that's a good suggestion.
note 3, under that same group of non-residential developments, the math doesn't work for me at all. You say 12,000 square feet of non-residential would need a minimum of 22,000 square feet of public open space, which is 20 and 2. I don't get 20.
Okay, so what it says
Do
is
those-
a project with 100 dwelling units
Yeah,
and 12,000 square feet of non-residential space would need a minimum of 22,000 square feet of public open space. And the parentheses is 20,000 square feet from the 100 dwelling units, because it's 200 square feet per dwelling unit, and 2,000 square feet from the 12,000 square feet of non-residential space. I can do the parentheses differently to make that
Yeah,
more.
just putting those details in.
yeah,
I think
maybe,
just as you
maybe
said
so.
Would be.
What the whole point
Where
of
are
it.
you guys?
Sorry, page 1.
Note 3.
Footnote number 3 under
Footnote
the
3 under
the
non-residential
table
development.
there. This was James's point of like these things should sum. It shouldn't be just one or the other. This
Yes.
is my way of trying to explain how that works. So I can clarify that.
Okay, thank you.
And did you guys talk about this 200 square foot per dwelling? Is there some,
Minimum threshold, I mean, like 200 square foot of open space for one dwelling is like useless.
You can't,
Right.
you're not required to do it.
And this only kicks in for projects that are
Okay.
10 dwelling units
Or
or
more.
6,000 square feet of non-residential. So if it's just a 10-unit project, you'll get
Okay,
the minimum
2,000
2,000 square feet,
okay.
which is still small, but is not meaningless as
Okay.
200 square feet would be.
all right.
And you said this is what you wanted to run it by your
I want to
planning
do.
buddies?
I want to do two things. When you're happy with it, I want to get the town attorney to look at it to see if we have a constitutional issue on the takings front, and I want to put it out to the Vermont Planners Association and say, hey, we're doing this cool thing, and I'd love it if a few people could do a peer review and give suggestions. So yeah, when you're happy with it, that's what I want to do, and I can do that. It probably makes sense to do that before you sort of put it out for public consumption.
Yeah.
We could do it concurrently, but I guess if, the town attorney came back and said, oh my God, what have you been talking about for the last 3 months?
Really get us into trouble.
Yeah, then Brett, that might not be a good thing to try to get public feedback on.
What was in those cookies? That
Did you start this all after July 1st? What were you doing? What were you eating? Is that so? If you're happy with these changes, I'll make them and then send this out for those reviews. Are you happy enough?
any additional comments?
You said you have another form of this?
Yeah, I can show you on screen actually. Or at least I hope I can. Did I save all that? I think I did. Yeah, let me show you.
Well, you think this is the clearest way?
I think so.
Between the two?
I started with a tabular representation because I thought it'd be more efficient, and then it got a little cumbersome. But I'll just show you. You can decide for yourself if it makes sense. Hold on a moment. Okay, so it might even be easier if I get rid of the track changes so you can just see it clean. Let me try that on screen at least.
Well, the track changes are just the red under.
Yeah, it's just the red underlining.
And the red underlining.
Is that gonna mess you up?
Oh, no, it'd be fine. No worries. I can always undo or not save. Okay.
Yeah.
So
that's
here's
what it looks
here's what the version you have would look like with the track changes off. So it's calculation examples, and it's got 3 different projects: project A, B, and C. First line describes the size of the project and how many units and such, and then it goes on from there.
I
The
think
al-
that's pretty good, pretty clear.
Seems decent, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
alternate version I was working on, and we do the same track changes here. I think I need to. No, I guess I don't need to. It's not under track changes. So the alternate version is just a tabular representation of that.
Like the text version better.
I like the
Yeah,
text
the
version
narrative.
better.
Okay,
Narrative is good.
very good. Then it,
I like the fact that you articulated how many square feet are in an acre.
yeah, I don't think that's common knowledge.
No.
No.
It used to
it's
be.
not.
It's burned
Right.
into my head, but yeah, so that's done in both examples. The one that you have in front of you has it as well in the notes here. Okay, well, very good. If I'll make the changes that we discussed and then send it out for legal review.
Yeah,
that'd Great.
be interesting to hear back. Or you do that and then run it by your buddies?
I might do those concurrently, actually. If they want to laugh at me, that's
Oh,
okay.
they wouldn't do that.
I can take it.
No, not to your face, Alex, no.
Are there situations, Alec, this is just sort of where like in these examples, it's sort of fascinating. Do you think that the zoning we have might on occasion, say for example, when you do these calculations, like I notice in each case you say, hey, this is how much land there is. Might there be development, say for example, that requires a certain amount of open space, but that
even given normal sizes of development units, both residential and commercial, that there just wouldn't be enough area to provide the kind of open space. You know what I mean?
Without
Like,
reducing
you do the
number of
calculation
units or
with either,
the
yeah,
non-residential square footage.
yeah. Oh, which is fine. Yeah. All right, forget it.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, again, these are village area design standards, so it's specific to the Hinesburg village. I'm sure there are definitely, if these regs were applied to other communities, growth centers, it could get problematic. But in ours, there seems to be a fair amount of available land
Yeah.
in these areas that are yet to be developed. And I think our experience with the proposals that have come in shows that there is a desire to see, chunks of, significant chunks of open space. So I don't think we're out of the pale, or beyond the pale, with that. Now, is there gonna be an example,
doesn't fly.
5 years from
Yeah.
now, if this gets passed, where somebody comes in and says, what were you thinking? I can't do that. Sure, there could be, but that's why this language includes the option to
Yeah.
opt out, and make a contribution to, improvements on
yeah.
another property or what have you.
You don't think it's gonna ever come about that? Yeah, they do put a public open space, but it's 2,000 square foot, and it really is not. We would rather have had them put money toward one of these other places.
Yes, I do think that will happen.
So why,
I think that.
like I said in the beginning, we pick out where we want them. Anybody builds outside of it, you just have to donate money toward those. You know what I mean? Instead of having it on their property, we decided where we want the public open spaces, haven't we?
Well, you decided where you want the big ones.
Well, some small ones.
One very small one. What you didn't talk
I don't
about,
know. I don't
what you
live in the
didn't talk
village,
about
so
is
I'm
for
just-
for smaller projects on smaller properties, where you might like to see smaller public open spaces. And I think F is an example of a smaller public open space. There may be other places where that could work.
But some of
But I
these
see your
places
point.
might not have enough room for public open space and just green space for their own area, their own residents.
Well, hopefully not, because as the parcels in question get smaller in size, the development potential also gets smaller, so the project size is gonna get smaller. So some of
So the
those aren't even
requirement
gonna
for
trigger
open
this,
space.
cause they'll be below the 10 unit, limit, or below 6,000 square feet of commercial space. Ones that are just over that are going to be triggering a requirement for like 2,000 square feet of space, but their property should be, commensurately large enough to accommodate that. But I hear your point, Dennis, and I understand what you're saying is logical, is that if we're most concerned about the big spaces, we don't really care about having lots of little spaces sprinkled on the medium-sized parcels. Why not allow them to contribute and not have to put it there? And that could be accomplished by tweaking the off-site allowance section of this, which was set to make it a little financially painful to
do that
do
rather
what you're
than
suggesting,
providing.
rather than provide it on site. I mean, we could tweak that to say, I don't know how you would do it, to either make it less painful or maybe have some sort of parcel size, or maybe official map presence test. Is there an official map item on your property? If so, it's going to be very painful for you to buy your way out of actually making improvements on your property. Is
that wouldn't make any
is
sense.
there
I
no
don't think
official
that
map
makes sense
element? Then we should make it easy for you to make a contribution rather than create the
That's
space.
what I think.
Everybody
Because it costs
understand?
money to get these things done.
Sure.
Of course.
Sure.
One way or
I mean,
the
you
other,
gotta-
you're gonna pay.
Well, I'll just remind you of John's comments, because we were headed in that direction a little bit, and John was one who pointed out, well, you can have some small positive spaces like that little bench, resting area by the corner of Commerce
For
Street. And,
Dennis and I to sit in.
yeah. And so why would we not want to see a sprinkling of smaller areas in addition to these bigger parks, that are around? but I understand what you're saying, so I'll stop talking. You all talk about that.
Well, I have a question that, did we discuss or decide why an 8-unit development does not have to contribute towards something or provide a small green
Why
space?
10 was the cutoff, anything
Yeah.
below 10?
I don't think you
Didn't
had
do
a
anything.
robust conversation about what those
What
cutoffs
that-
were, except for the fact that I gave you a first draft that had some, and the only comment was James's to say, hey, I think the cutoff is a little low for non-residential. I think the first draft, it may have been 3,000 square feet or something like that of non-residential, and it triggered it. But I don't think you talked about the residential side. Why is it 10? And should it actually be 2 or 6 or 12? Feel you're welcome to talk about it. From my standpoint, I think it's helpful, in part because of what Dennis is saying, to not burden smaller projects that are not going to benefit from the economies of scale that a larger project will, with providing a developed public's piece of infrastructure, because they don't have the
Okay,
bandwidth
so
or
could
the.
they then contribute towards another developing area in town?
Well,
Towards
yeah, my
another
point is
park?
that their profit margin is so much smaller that to ask them to contribute a sizable, a chunk of money, or to provide that on the site might sink the project. Whereas a project that has 30 units, it just has a little bit more wiggle room to be able to
True.
absorb that additional cost. But where you set the bar, whether it should be 10 or whether there isn't a limit at all, or whether it should be 6 or 12, I don't think there's any real magic
Because you wonder
there.
how it would have affected this project over here. Because isn't that affordable?
Green Street,
You wonder how that would have affected that.
it's a good question, actually.
I mean, because it's affordable housing. What? I guess you got to talk to the lawyer first.
No, it's a good question, because that was a 24, approximately 24 unit project. There's an existing apartment house up on 116 that was part of it, but just the new development was about that. And it's a very large parcel, so it had a lot of acreage. Its development potential was actually more than what they put in, but it's so constrained by the flood hazard area and the associated wetlands that they really built on the only available space. And
What if this
so
rule
20
had applied
so
to
24
that project?
units, there's no non-residential. Well, they did propose some, but didn't get built. It wouldn't have been much here anyway. So let's just say 24 units, 200 square feet per unit. What's the math there?
4,800.
4,800, that right?
Yes.
4,800 square feet. So the current plan that they have would not have met that.
There's no 4,800
There
square
is
feet.
there is a public open space where the swing is,
Yeah.
and where the sidewalk comes in from Route 116. So there is a green space there, and the DRB talked about that as, if you remember, like that's going to be your place where kids can sort of hang out, and maybe you could throw a ball with your daughter. And but I don't think it's 4,800
That's not
square feet.
4,800
I think
square
they
feet.
would have been compelled to change the design to increase that space a bit more. Now, would that have been a bad thing?
Which might have reduced.
I'm not
the
sure that would have been a bad thing.
It would have been bad for the people that want an affordable place to buy.
I'm not sure. I think it might have forced them to be more creative with their units and how they were laid out. It might have created an opportunity to do a taller unit. Maybe one of those units would have had a second story residential use, rather than all of these that are either flats or townhouse style. I think they could still have gotten their 24 units, but they would have had to have been a little more creative with how they laid them out, and they would have had to expand at least a little bit. I could actually. I wonder if I could. I don't
They're
think.
rentals, Dennis, not purchase.
I don't think I have
All
a.
rentals.
Yeah.
Rentals.
I don't think I have a current aerial photo, so I can't measure that open space that they created to tell you how many square feet it is, but I'm pretty sure it's way less than 4,800 square feet. It's probably like, I don't know.
Half.
Yeah, probably close to 2,000
Yeah.
square feet.
That was public open space or for just them?
Well, in their project, it's not public, it's just for the neighborhood, but the sidewalks are public. And it's not like they have fenced off and signs saying, you know, you're not welcome on our swing, but I suppose they could do that if they wanted. But again, I don't think that would have changed if the town had compelled them to not only make the sidewalks, but their green space open to the public. I don't think that would have changed much. What they would have probably argued is, if you're gonna make us do that, and we're putting in these sidewalks, the town needs to take over those sidewalks and plow them. We don't do that now. So that would have made it an interesting conversation, a more interesting conversation on what the town should have been on the hook for.
They could have also dropped, say, 2 units,
Sure.
opened up some space that way, but maybe the economics of the whole project didn't work out.
Yeah.
It needed to have 24 new units.
I don't want to speak to that. I don't really
Right,
know.
no, I mean-
It was a turnkey
Right.
project, so Snyder, did the project with the full knowledge that it was going to be sold when it was finished to Champlain Housing Trust, and I just don't remember what CHT's requirements were for the number of units. But that's a good example of one where it probably would have had to have been a bit different if these regs were in place.
What about the second phase of Creekside? Could we test that? Mm-hmm. Could we look at that under these rules and see if it either meets or not?
Yep,
These
we
rules?
could. I don't know if I can do it off the cuff, but we could.
No, I wouldn't.
And we know what the
suggest that.
master plan build out is. It's 66 more units. It's 13,000 square feet of non-residential space, so we could do the calculations pretty quick.
I mean, Rolf's question was, do we know that this 200 square foot per unit, or what I heard was, is that an appropriate number?
Right. Well, it's,
What does that do to the developer's side of things?
yep. So we did those calculations for Haystack, and what was required was actually less than what they had proposed in terms of area. So it seemed to
Yeah.
work out there. As
Yeah.
far as the Hinesburg Center project, if it's 66
Theirs
new-
was public open space?
Well, you asked that question then too. I think their intent was for it to be public, not just neighborhood, but I don't think that was 100% outlined. It said community park. What did they mean by the word community? In the Hinesburg Center case, that next phase with 66 units, 200 square feet per unit, that's 13,200 square feet of public open space under these proposed regs. They also had 13,000 square feet, a little more, of non-residential space. So that would have been
That adds a
about,
little more.
that would about 3,000 square feet, I think is what
More.
you had calculated.
Why
So
did the select board didn't want him to be able to
the
pay for
playground,
lot one
Pay for,
or develop it?
there was no plan for what would be done on Lot 1.
well, there was. I don't know. I think part of it was they didn't feel like there was a fully fleshed out plan for Lot 1.
Certainly
even though there
not
was a conceptual plan that was done as a part of the fire station project.
But now it would be a certain amount of money that would just be put into a pot.
Right, it wouldn't be for
For a particular project.
Yeah. Well, so I don't have a good answer for you on that one. You've asked that one before too, but you'd have to talk to those select board members. I really thought it was a good idea, to be perfectly honest. Of course, I was the one who suggested it, so why would I not think it was a good idea? But I went back recently and looked at it. He had Mike Boucher, his landscape architect, cost it out too, and he had a specific, like, this play set, this, these 6 play structures.
For Lot 1?
Yeah,
No,
for the
that
tot lot.
Yeah.
For the tot lot.
Wasn't that done by the landscape architect who worked on the project?
Yeah, but
With
when,
Asher?
But when
Or
Brett
did
when Brett proposed to pay for the tot lot,
They wanted to know what
they
the
wanted
cost
to know
would be.
what it would actually be, and so he costed it all out, and he said if the SE's group estimate for the tot lot was 30,000, here's what we can buy with 30,000. Assuming that a certain slice of that's going to be for installation and all that. Anyways, It was all fleshed out. It looked decent to me, but the board didn't want to do it. In any case, Hinesburg Center, 66 units, 13,000 square feet non-residential, 16,000 square feet of public open space.
Public open space.
What I can't do is tell you what's in their
How much
what's in
is
their
in
master
their
plan.
proposal.
they have significant chunks of open space. Whether that was going to be public or for the neighborhood is a different question.
Yeah, there's that sliver alongside the existing houses or behind
Yeah.
the existing
Yeah,
houses.
I could try to find the
think.
project and bring it up. I might have it in my things here. Jeff did a nice compilation of all the projects. Where is it here? No, I don't see it. Oh, it is
Future
right here.
development?
Yeah, compilation. So this is something Jeff French put together. Thank you, Jeff, in absentia. So if I zoom in on the Hinesburg Center area, it's fuzzy, but is it actually accurate? I think it is. So hard to see because it's fuzzy, but this is an open space area. And this was proposed as a neighborhood park. You know, he was going to take what is a green space today and mostly serves the benefit of the existing neighborhood, but he still has control over it. And he was going to fill it and drain it more properly and plant it and turn it into a community park. His vision, I think, was for it to be a neighborhood park, not a town park, but certainly this is in excess of the 16,000 square feet that we just calculated would be required. This little space here, I'm not sure. I'd have to run some GIS. My guess is that's smaller than 16,000.
What's that green up?
Up
top?
here?
Yeah, what's that?
Yeah, I don't remember.
It says something on it.
Yeah, it
Phase-
says phase 2,
Oh,
I
phase
think.
2, yeah, okay.
I don't remember. He did propose quite a lot of open space out here in the flood hazard area.
But that's not,
It's all prime ag soils. He talked about having a area here for parking and like a potential for a barn outside of the flood hazard area, and then having the area that does flood, remain ag fields or maybe be a solar array or something. But
That phase 2 is just referring to this
This-
whole project.
this overall
Phase
area,
1,
yes.
it's over there, so there is a green,
yeah, there's
odd-shaped something
something
up
there, and I forget what that is.
My attention.
But to answer the basic question, in
Right,
the
a
green,
bioretention
there you go.
facility.
In the Green Street project, these regs would have required them to change their plan a bit. I think it could have happened and probably might have been
Still
to the
would have
benefit.
worked.
In this project, it depends.
Yeah.
If this was counted towards that and was made available to the community, the town, not just the neighborhood, then they would have no problem. Nothing would change here.
Yeah,
If not, and this was the only area they were thinking of, maybe making a town pocket park, then either it would have to change or, something out here or something over here would have to be assigned.
that's a good example of what would really be an effective town facility. That little square in the middle, I'd have a hard time thinking of that as something that belongs to the town.
Yeah,
Not so much
Yeah.
with this larger piece
Yeah,
down
that-
here.
yeah.
That's right straight ahead from Farmall Drive. It's right in front of you. It's right there.
alrighty then.
So I guess we leave the 200 square foot?
Alrighty then. So are we good with, we're good with the design standards. Let's,
okay, I'll make
Yeah.
the changes and
Let's
send
do
them
it.
out for legal review.
yeah.
And hopefully I'll have that maybe for your next meeting so that you can review both the letter to landowners for the official map and whatever feedback we got on the design standards, so we can go live with that afterwards.
All right. Let's look at the minutes for August 22nd. Any comments, additions, deletions? outright fabrications.
Good to me.
Motion? You weren't here?
Motion to approve the minutes.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Steve.
I won the prize for being the most talkative. I can see. JK, John said.
And other business and correspondence?
The only one that I have is this notice we got from the town of Williston. I think I forwarded it to you, or maybe I just put it in the Dropbox. But they are their planning commission's having a hearing on September 18th. They're revising their regulations, mostly specific to their growth management system, which is of interest, because our sort of interim wastewater allocation committee is studying Williston's system and just actually had their director of planning and zoning come last night and talk about it. If you're into that sort of thing, take a look. It makes for some interesting reading, although it's pretty complicated. So beware.
Was it smart in that town or what?
Smart
Smart growth.
or have had a lot of experience. Could be a mixture of both.
Okey doke.
All right, that's it.
Jean just walked in. I don't know if
Jean, do you have anything?
Jean wanted to address.
We know
the
who you
commission.
are because it says right there.
I've just been to the Act 250, the next 50 years hearing in Burlington, and I'm just catching a ride home.
Okay.
I guess I should let you know about that, and Jean's reminding me.
Yes,
So, the legislature last year, in 2 sessions ago, passed a law that said that that an Act 250 commission would be formed, and that it would provide recommendations to the legislature by December of this year, or maybe the beginning of the next legislative session in January, on ways to improve both the Act 250 state permitting system for development and potentially local level review, but it's mostly focused on Act 250. And so that commission organized itself some time ago, and this summer has been on a listening tour, and they've been holding forums in different communities, and they have sort of a way to do these forums where they explain a little bit, and then they break people into groups and hear what people have to say, and they're talking about reforms in Act 250 in every direction. So some people are involved in this because they think Act 250 is a bear, and the appeal process is too litigious, and they want to fix that. Other people think Act 250 is outdated because it doesn't consider climate change, and we got to get that into the mix because that's happening. Other people think, well, we have a better sense of where wildlife habitat and forest resources are, and Act 250's criteria are not well tuned to that. We should update that. So there are all sorts of legislators and constituent groups that would like to both fine-tune, make more efficient, strengthen, weaken Act 250, and this commission is charged with making recommendations on all of those fronts. So
Commissioners are senators and representatives
Yep.
out of the Vermont House and Senate.
Yep, they appointed themselves to the commission. Originally, it was going to have some issue area experts and some legislators, and then they eventually said, nah, we'll just make it us. So they're all legislators, and they're listening, and many groups are contributing, but they've done this series of forums, and tonight's was the last one, and it was held here in Burlington. I wanted to go, but your meeting was more important. So just know that that's happening, and that once the commission actually releases their report, this next legislative session will probably see a lot of action on the permit reform front.
Are they looking at properties that are in Act 250?
Yes.
And they totally change how they can get out of Act 250?
Yes, that's a big topic of conversation, is whether there's a way you can release a property from Act 250 jurisdiction, because some properties, there used to be a criteria that said if you have a dead-end road of over 800 feet, you're subject to Act 250 review, and that that then changed. I don't know if that was 10 years ago or so. So currently, that's no longer a trigger for Act 250 review. You would not come under Act 250 review if you proposed a dead-end road over 800 feet. But for projects that got an Act 250 permit 20 years ago under that criteria, they can never get out of the Act 250 process. So every time they want to modify their subdivision in any way, it has to go back through Act 250 review. And there's been a lot of conversation about figuring out a more logical way to release those properties from the Act 250 system. There's also been talk that the Vermont Planners Association in particular has been vocal about in thinking about whether Act 250 review is necessary in designated growth areas where the municipality has already applied to the state and the state has approved this as an area where we want to see development and dense development. And so there are some who are advocating that Act 250 is redundant in that situation, especially if the municipality has robust planning and
Well, a
zoning
developer
tools.
can only do what, 9 lots and
The trigger, well, that's another part of the
5
discussion.
years.
Where should the trigger be? Currently, the trigger is 10. You asked why ours was 10. Maybe I pulled it from Act 250, but 10 dwelling units or more, you're into Act 250.
In a 5-year period.
In a 5-year period within
Oh, a certain
within
distance.
the district. There's the state's broken up into different districts.
they're fairly large districts.
They are large, yep. So if you're a person who's done a development in one side of the county 4 years ago, and now you're doing a development on the other side of the county,
You gotta put
it
them
will-
together.
They will come together and
Yeah.
potentially trigger Act 250 unless you wait out the 5 years. So there's lots of things being discussed, and they're taking feedback. But I think probably the more feedback will happen once this commission makes some recommendations, because then we'll have something solid to oppose or support or be concerned about.
Chris Pearson, the senator from Chittenden County, is the vice chair of the committee.
Is he? I didn't even know that.
That gives one hope. All right, motion to adjourn.
So move.
Thank you, everybody.